you're glimpsing how motivated you can be.
The willpower to go, I want to go from here to here, right? And then the consistency to set these goals and achieve the goals to get there.
If you're pushing yourself above the average mentality, above the average fitness, you're going to get above average results. You can start using that willpower on your next step, whether that be building a business or your career or whatever it is you want to do. It's about how efficient your willpower is being used.
Welcome to the Lucid Fitness Podcast. I'm Erik and this is Sarah, and we started Lucid Fitness to help beginners find actionable guidance in a sea of fitness and nutrition information.
Welcome back to the Lucid Fitness Podcast. I'm Erik and this is Sarah, and this is our 7th episode of the Lucid Fitness Podcast. We'll be discussing the 7th and final Lucid Fitness core principle, cultivating a strong, a powerful, whatever word you want to use, mindset. Is an important part of the journey, and it kind of ties all of the other things together because it's a critical adhesive for all of the other things to help bring them together. So the first 3 episodes of the podcast, we talked about the fitness. We talked about finding a routine that fits into your life, prioritizing compound exercises, and then implementing or embracing progressive overload. We talked about the nutrition for number 4 through 6, which was calories in, calories out, consuming whole foods, and then eating a right amount of protein and fats. And so this is the 7th and final piece of the puzzle of the Lucid Fitness principle.
If you haven't seen those other podcasts, they will be linked in the description below, as well as the playlist if you like to catch up with us. You can have the best, most perfect workout plan. You can have the best nutrition set up, but if you don't have a mindset that goes into setting those into action, what really do you have?
And I think this is it's a broad concept. Yeah. And, everybody talks about the mindset required for it, but it's very hard to drill it down into a very distinguished understanding of the mindset required to be successful with fitness and nutrition. And so at Lucid Fitness, we kind of drilled it down into 3 main things. The first one being willpower, the second being consistency, and the third being discipline. They all kind of loosely tie into, or not even loosely, strongly tie into one another. There's a reason that these things are so prominent in personal development world and so prominent in the fitness and nutrition world, is because they're important, I dare say, character traits that need to be learned and need to be developed and used in order to be effective in this sport, I guess, for lack of a better word, the sport of wellness. And wellness being a combination of fitness, nutrition, mindfulness, and I would say, my personal belief, it's spirituality, goes a lot into that as well.
It's a whole picture. It's like we've talked about in every episode. It's about the balance of the whole person that creates this success that we want to help you develop and gain these tools to be able to develop that for yourself. So let's break those down. First, we have that spark, the willpower to act, that initial surge of determination to start.
Right.
I think that's usually not extremely difficult for people to find. You get a spark of inspiration. You have this moment of, sometimes it's even something even a little bit scary or traumatic happens. It's like, you know what, I need to fix this. I need to change that. And that's where that willpower begins to start cranking.
Right. And most people have had brief periods of willpower. Most people who start their gym career, they get that, whatever happens, whatever catalyst happens. We talked about catalyst previously. Whatever happened kind of invoked that willpower. And, believe what you want, that's originating from within. And it's a glimpse, those fleeting moments of willpower, that's a glimpse of potentiality is the way I look at it. So you're glimpsing how motivated you can be. You're glimpsing how driven you can be, and you're glimpsing at what willpower actually is. But again, it's fleeting unless you learn to capture it and use it. And so I think that it's hard to put real definitions to these things. And, to some people, willpower and discipline may be very similar things, but willpower as a whole, I think, is best explained as a resource that we use to do things that we wouldn't necessarily do, right? And by nature, right? Like most people don't naturally want to eat entirely healthy and, go to the gym and lift heavy weights for no reason. Like, I wouldn't say it's like naturally ingrained in us, especially not with the current society, to want to do those things. It may at a primal level, like exercise and eating well, at a primal level resonates with most people, but I wouldn't say that most people require willpower to get up and go to the gym and get up and make a food instead of ordering food. And so that's where willpower comes in. I think the general consensus is that willpower is a resource that can become depleted over time. And I'm of the belief that willpower it's almost like a well, right? And you can learn and you can dig your well deeper and deeper by, practicing, willpower and learning discipline and stuff. But for the most part, it's a limited resource. And I think that that's kind of where they fall into these worlds where their willpower is so low, and then they get these sparks of motivation wherever that's originating from. And so they go and they act on it, but then it's 2 or 3 days before they're, back laying on the couch watching Netflix or whatever their lazy activity is. And it's because they run out of the resource. They run out of the willpower that's required to like continuously get yourself going until you establish more discipline in your life.
That flows right perfectly into the next one, which is consistency. Consistency is that thing that you do in those small moments and repeated efforts that when that willpower is running out or has run dry, you are doing it to have the act of doing it, not because you want to do it, not because you're inspired to do it, but because this is the thing that you do.
And like I was saying, they all flow into each other. They're all very relevant to one another. And so the consistency and the habitual nature of, applying and using your willpower, that nature of doing it consistently is what forges discipline. And it's hard to talk about one single one without bringing up the other because they all go together, right? And so when we think consistency, it's exactly what the word means, right? You're doing something over and over and over and over again. You're doing it consistently over time to get whatever the result is. Yeah. And, as we've repeatedly talked about with fitness and nutrition, consistency is the name of the game, right? And yeah, willpower matters. Discipline certainly matters. But like nothing really matters if you can't consistently apply it. It's like having the willpower to get started. Okay, yeah, like that's important. You have to have the willpower to get started and the willpower to get up and having the discipline where you're disciplined for, a few weeks at a time. Without the consistency, those things, they're fleeting, right? To use that word again. And I do think that, and that's the key thing. Like without the consistency and applying willpower and having discipline consistently over time, then it goes away, right? You stop getting the benefit, you stop getting the results that you want, and then everything fizzles, right? And so they all kind of go together. And the final one being discipline. And discipline's I consider it more of a construct, right? It's a construct of habits and patterns in your life that you intentionally and purposefully establish that helps with your limited willpower, right? And so I don't have to apply willpower to eat healthy because I have discipline. I have established like a meal plan, and I have established a habit of eating that makes it so that it doesn't take willpower for me to eat healthy anymore, right? It doesn't deplete that resource. Granted, I have a deep willpower well now, but it goes hand in hand because it's not just about how deep your willpower well is, it's about how efficient your willpower is being used, right? Like if you don't have like a meal plan, or if you don't have a plan for your meal in the day, we most recently started doing it with you and the kids,
Yeah.
trying to find like a meal plan so that you don't have to spend so much mental energy having to
Figuring out
plan.
what we're going to do for
Yeah.
dinner and after having worked all day and all
Mhm.
of those sort of things. Absolutely.
And so it's the discipline of building, the life in a way that fitness, nutrition, wellness, spirituality, mindfulness, all of these things are done as your like natural state, right? And I think that that's kind of the goal. And that's, to me, that's what discipline is doing those things in a way that's like, it's no longer a conscious thing. Like you may think about it from time to time, but it's like, I don't have to really, it doesn't take me willpower to get up and go to the gym. I have a routine that I follow, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't take me willpower to prepare a food. I just have this plan that I follow. And that's discipline, right? And so you build your life in the way where your willpower you can start using that willpower on, building new things, right? You can start using that willpower on your next step, whether that be building a business or your career or, being a better lover or whatever it is you want to do. Having discipline in the critical things that improve your life first and foremost, and then frees up your mental cycles to focus on other things.
When you're not focusing on surviving, just eating and making yourself, better in these ways, when those are the habits, and then you're able to come back into it and have the energy and thought processes to do these things and these bigger goals and these other ideas that you have. That's a huge, powerful tool for a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's why personal development, you see so many of them talk about fitness, and you see so many of them talk about, like, it goes hand in hand, right? The better you can build up your body and your mental state, the better you're going to be able to do all other ventures of your life,
Yeah.
right? Strong body creates the ability to do more and more things, carry more load, right? And that load being actual physical load of being able to, stay up late sometimes versus the more of a mental load of just having the resiliency. And, if I could add a fourth one, resiliency would be an important one, because that's an important aspect of like understanding that it is functionally hard, right? We've talked about this before, like these things are difficult to do.
Well, it's almost, in my mind, like, of course, everyone has, like you said, everyone kind of has their own idea of what willpower and discipline, those sort of things like, but these things together become that. You get resiliency because of these things. They come together to create that for yourself. You almost like a shield against the things that are coming at you in your life.
A shield's a good way to put it, for sure. And it's this idea of like, once you create a mentality and a lifestyle that is inherently resilient, and that becomes your identity, like your identity is resilient, then that shield is just like, it's around you constantly without you having to think about it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't have to, going back to our food episodes where we talked about, like, when I go to a party and I see a bunch of, cookies and chips around, I may have a chip or two, but I don't have to like consciously resist. Like, I don't have to, like, I have that, as you put it, I have that shield of like, that's not my identity. My identity isn't to gorge myself on snacks day in and day out. Like, I've put too much, and there's a certain element of like, I put so much work into this, into carving this body, into making my mindset this way, that you don't want to throw it away for some Doritos, right? Like, but I mean, you've seen it. You've seen me. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I haven't had a Dorito in a while. I'll eat a Dorito, but it's this idea where it's an inversion of the normal average person, where they're in this like consume anything mindset, and with little fleeting points of willpower that drive them to the gym once a month. Right, versus the inversion where your identity becomes like, now I am a fit, healthy, spiritual, happy, mindful person with these fleeting points of, weakness. And I don't even consider it a weakness anymore. It's like enjoyment. It's like, oh man, like, I like Doritos, right? I want to try a Dorito. And it's a lot, there's no guilt with it, because I understand, like, I'm eating this certain way where I'm healthy, and like the vast majority of things that people see as negative, I can do because I don't identify with somebody who's over consuming food or who is sedentary. I'm not those things. So even brief periods of being sedentary, like you and I relaxing on Saturday, that is not reflective of who we are. That's just like a tool, a mechanism. It kind of changes the definition of these things, right? Like it's not sedentary, it's rest, right? It's not
cheating, it's enjoying.
Yeah, it's just like it's definitely a different way of looking at things, and that can only be achieved through these mindful aspects and carving this new identity, right? And at the end of the day, like that's what these core principles are trying to do, is to give you the most distilled version of carving yourself into, in my mind, what a lot of people want, someone who's fit, healthy, active, and able to do things. And but that's not to say it doesn't take some work, and it's a lot of work on the mental side of things, because again, going back to the 6 other core principles, do any of those matter if you don't consistently apply them? I mean, it may matter in the sense of, let's say over a year you work out once. It is objectively better than working out 0 times, right? Like it is better, but I wouldn't say somebody who worked out once in a year is healthy, right? But what about once in a month? You're still like 12 workouts a year, pretty good compared to 0, right? What about once a week? Now we're talking, now we're doing something. Now we're forging somebody who's, working out 50 times a year. Like that's somebody, you're inching closer to that identity of somebody who works out. Like if someone asked you and you're like, I worked out 50 times last year, like, I'm proud of you. That's good. Like that's awesome. Like most people can't say that, right? It's like if you read a book a month, like how many people read a book every month? Very few people. Yeah. Like, and at the end of the year, if you said, I read 12 books last year, there may be readers out there like, I read 12 books this week, but at the end of the day, it's like, if you're pushing yourself above the average mentality, above the average fitness, you're going to get above average results. You're going to, over time, it may take you longer than somebody who's working out 5 times a week, but that doesn't matter. That's them. That's what they can fit into their life, not you. And so what I'm trying to get at is like building this identity of like what you want to be. Like do you want to be known as the person who, is fit and healthy and, lively and happy and has all of these attributes that are admirable? You need to work to become that, because the reason they're admirable, the reason things are admirable traits, personality traits, is because they're hard to get.
Because other people admire them. That's what admirable means. It's of note that is difficult to achieve.
Right, exactly. And that's what makes fitness and nutrition and mindfulness so powerful, is because at a certain point it's undeniable. It's like, oh, this person put in work. It may take you 10 years to get there before people are like, man, this guy, like he's doing something right. Or this girl, she's doing something right. And it takes time to get there, but when you do, it's like, and we've talked about positive feedback loops. Like those are the feedback loops. Somewhere along the year or two, you're gonna start getting, people are gonna start looking at you and like, man, you put on some muscle, right? Dang, you look big. Like I remember I was eating at Olive Garden once, and this guy, I used to be friends with him when we worked at Papa Murphy's. I hadn't seen him in like 3 or 4 years. And he was at Olive Garden and he like walked by and he's like, oh man, Erik? And I like stood up and I like hugged him because I hadn't seen him in a while. He's like, man, you look big. And I was like, at the time I was like 160, and I was still small compared to how I am now. But those sorts of things, like fitness and nutrition, it becomes undeniable after a while, right? And so, and especially with the mindfulness, people, it doesn't always register with people, but they see you and they're like, something's different about you. Yeah. There's like a look in your eyes, like a determination, right? There's this like, he's not messing around anymore, right? Like the Erik I knew who was, gaming 12 hours a day, this is a different Erik, right? This is somebody who's focused. This is somebody who's like ready to bang. And so
Absolutely. I think, especially when I met you first, that was one of the most attractive things about you, was exactly that discipline and willpower and the consistency and how you talked and held yourself to this admirable level was one of the most attractive things I found about you. Absolutely.
And it takes, to try to remain humble after that compliment, it takes work, right? Like it's taken many, many years. I've been lifting, I've been lifting for 15 years now, right? Off and on, because I had my own journey, right? And so I'm just now reaching the point where I feel like, okay, I kind of know what I'm doing, right? And to do something for so long, it very much becomes your identity, right? I no longer feel like I'm not somebody who goes to the gym. It's I'm just a fit person. And it's something I've talked about in the past with one of my friends, Michaela. She was interested in starting her fitness journey, and I explained to her that it is becoming a fit person that is the long-term game. It's not being somebody who goes to the gym. It's becoming a fit person. What does that mean? And so the Lucid principles, those are the things that make you and carve you into the fit person, right?
Yeah, I like that. It goes right into our next two major things to hit, which is setting goals and then visualizing success. Like you were exactly just telling Michaela, what does that mean, being a fit person?
And it's different for everybody, right? To people who want to run triathlons, being a fit person means totally different than somebody who just wants to be shredded and look good naked, right? Those are, they're vastly different things, but they're the same, it's the same process, right? You define who and what you want to be. And this may be something that's harder than is often given credit for. Really honing on and thinking about what is it that you want to be? What do you want to be? When people look at you, what do you want them to see? And the answer to me was I want them to see somebody who's competent, somebody who's disciplined, somebody who's building something bigger than himself, and I started latching on to these identities. Somebody on the Discord, I think I know who it is, but obviously I haven't confirmed it, but he came in and he was talking about the struggles in his life, and he was talking about it in the mindfulness section of the Discord, and I kind of had a brief moment of wisdom where it's everybody has all of these thoughts all day, every day, right? And that's why mindfulness is so important, because you have to look at these thoughts, right? Oftentimes we have negative thoughts, and oftentimes we have positive thoughts. And you as you start developing the skill in being mindful, through meditation or whatever means you want to do, you start to recognize reoccurring thoughts, and you honestly, over time, you start to learn to choose specific thoughts that you want to identify with. And that's how you truly become who you want to be, is, just through doing the mental work of I like when people recognize that I'm a fit person. So when I have thoughts that are conducive with being a fit person, then, I latch onto those and allow those to be my identity, right? And, we could go into, thought processes and stuff like that, but the idea is simple. You just choose which thoughts and which things you want to be, and then you build a life that you think is going to lead you there, right? I want to be a business owner, so I started a business. I want to be a fit person, so I go to the gym. I want to be healthy, so I choose healthy decisions, right? And so once you start identifying with these things, it makes it a lot easier to follow along a trajectory that is overwhelmingly positive, because I no longer have to make the decision. It's just become who I am, right? I don't necessarily know every single step of like what exactly I need to do next, but I know that if I continue to churn towards this greater goal of being this vision, this person I have as my identity, I know that I will just naturally gravitate towards the right thought processes and things. But that's kind of, we're borderline on the abstract now, but there's a certain element of choosing first and foremost who you want to be. And that's where, I don't know if you mentioned it, but that's where like setting goals are important, right? And goals are important as dynamic elements of your life.
Markers.
Right.
They mark certain points from you visualizing or saying, here I am, this is where I want to be. Setting goals and achieving goals is a way to visually and physically and emotionally and mentally connect with, I am progressing along this line to get to this destination. It's almost like the willpower to go, I want to go from here to here, right? And then the consistency to set these goals and achieve the goals to get there.
Goals are funny because oftentimes I'll reach a goal, like when I released the app, like that was overwhelmingly like a neutral experience for me. Like everyone else is like, awesome, you're doing great. I was like, yeah. Because I had already made up in my mind, like the app was already released to me. I was just like putting in the effort to make it released. And so I guess the celebration was kind of drawn out across, several months and thousands of hours. It was kind of underwhelming. And I think that a lot of it was just like, it's more about the journey of getting, this is very cliche. Now we're in the very cliche thing. So I don't want to go too deep, but there's a certain element of like, once you get to a goal, you got to set a new goal, right? Like nobody ever becomes fit and like stops, right? It's like, I got muscles, I'm done. I don't need to work out anymore.
It ends up becoming a partly habit, but also partly once you've done it, like once you've decided and once you've learned how to be consistent and once you've developed discipline and once you've created that shield and once you've started taking these steps and implementing these tools, it becomes a bit of a exciting like step. You're excited for the next step. It's not about achieving the next step, so I'll be happy. It's finding happiness in taking the step, which then makes you want to take the next one.
And it's hard and maybe this is a little bit too deep for like people beginning their journey, but there is an element of just like having a next step. And I think even the act of having that first step, like very clear, like that in and of itself is something worth thinking about. It's like what that first step looks like, even just the thought of, this is crazy to think about, but the thought of thinking about your first step, really thinking about your first step, like that in and of itself is a milestone, right? And you can celebrate it, hopefully not too much because you haven't even taken the step yet. But the fact that you're thinking like, man, my life's kind of gone to shit. I want to do something about that. And I remember how liberating that was for me when I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was like, I want to do something with fitness. Let me start a website. And, I started a website. And then I was like, man, like, how do I get people to these websites? I probably need to start doing stuff online to get people to go to this website. I'm going to start a Twitter. I started writing. Then when I started writing, I was like, oh, cool. I have some cool ideas, but I don't really like the act of writing, right? And so then I started, then I had a lull. Then I started thinking about, oh man, like how do I really do this? How do I really do it? And I started like thinking and all the thoughts started coming to me because I had the next step. I knew that there was a next step. And at some points, like you don't even know what the next step is. You just kind of are stepping forward. And that's kind of get a lot like stepping into the unknown. And then as me and my buddy Dylan, we talk about this often, like you start working towards this higher self, right? The version of you that is closer to the perfect you, the vision of you in the future. Maybe you can kind of see an abstract of that, but you may not know clearly. But in order to start to see more and more, you have to reach the next milestone. And sometimes it's not exceedingly clear. And I think for some people, like it's not clear at all. And what I'm saying is, it's very important. Fitness and nutrition is for many people the first step, right? Unless you have an entrepreneur mindset already, or you have parents, or you have, like, there's a reason so many people in personal development world and in the business world take their fitness and nutrition seriously, is because it changes your life in a lot of different ways. And it also helps build this mindset. And going back to discipline, it teaches you it teaches you so many things, but it teaches you delayed gratification, right? And it teaches you that discipline matters. And I think until you see discipline actually working, until you see the effects of what discipline can bring you, which is the long game, until you see that, you don't fully understand it. It's like, it's very similar to how people who are not fit, who are unhealthy, don't understand what it's like to have the energy levels and the emotional control and the foresight that somebody who has been eating healthy and who has been choosing the healthy options. They've been down and we talked about this before, they've been down in the gutters for so long, they don't really even know how far down they are, right? Because it's just become their norm. And so they wake up every day feeling like shit, but to them, that's their normal. So they accept it. And until you start like building it back and crawling your way out, then it's a lot, right? And going back to what I mentioned before, like the momentum shifting aspect of switching from sedentary to like a fit lifestyle, that's a big shift, right? But it all comes from the mental aspects to rein us back in. Like having willpower, that's a skill. Being consistent, that's a skill. Being disciplined, that's a skill. I would say at different points in my life, I had none of that. Right? My willpower was like, get done with work as quickly as possible so I have more time to play video games, right? And so you do have to make the conscious decision, and nobody can make that conscious decision for you. And so you have to kind of just like set the smallest, we talked about it with the lifting weights, but you set the smallest possible increment of improvement and you apply a little bit every day. One of the most influential books of my 20s and into my 30s, in fact, everything I do, is a book called The Slight Edge. And the idea is it talks primarily about like compounding interest and the ability of like compounding gains over time. And if you take the idea of compounding interest out of the financial world and apply it to all of the aspects of your life, you get somebody who goes from, in a 10-year period, you get somebody who goes from, a loser to somebody who's, building a business and doing something with their life. And so that all came for me, and specifically from very incremental improvements, reading a little bit more, eating a little bit better, lifting a little bit more, working a little bit more on my internal world. And then eventually you just hit this point where like, it almost like happen. It feels like it happens overnight. Like you just wake up one day and you're like, oh, I'm this person now, right? And in my case, it was jarring, right? I told you like that when I released the app, like it was a fairly neutral experience, but then I almost had this like period of like back to uncertainty. And I had a few people reach out and tell me like, hey, if you need any help, let me know. I'll do whatever you need. And I was thinking about that, and that kind of hit me hard because these were people who were, and as I told you, these are people who are professionals. They could spend their time on anything, and they're choosing to, help me because they saw something in my vision. And that hit me heavy. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror and thinking like, who is this person that I've become? And there is an element of like waking up one day and you are just, you're a fit, healthy, happy thinking person. And you don't want to lose that, right? And so you just keep going and you keep grinding and you keep applying these small things. There's days where I feel like I don't even improve, but then I'll wake up the next day and, I'll have great new thoughts, and I can only attribute it to the day before, right? And so constantly pushing yourself forward.
It was just so awesome just hearing you talk about that, because the next thing I wanted to touch on was finding support, sharing your journey with friends and family, and building a community. Just having you talk about your friends coming forward and people wanting to help you and all of that. It was just like, oh, it's just
I feel blessed in a lot of ways, right? Because you always hear if you have haters, you're going the right way. But I've found overwhelmingly the opposite. And maybe that's just the work and the time and the energy I put into, building strong relationships with people. But I want to continue that, right? And so that's what I want for Lucid Fitness, is to build a community that's, feeding back into itself and, able to grow and develop as we go, right? Like allowing people to, latch on to our picture, our vision, and to grow with us, right? Even if it means, maybe we have to drag people along for a little while, but it's planting those seeds, right? It's like, maybe you join the community and you just lurk, maybe you just watch your stuff on Instagram, but every single person who like watches these things and, consumes this thing, they're getting a little bit closer to the ideal version of themselves, because what we're talking about is pure, right? These are ideas, like this is me trying to give other people and us trying to give other people a pure form of what we feel like can help any and everyone, right? And obviously there's edge cases. We were just talking about my mom and how we can apply Lucid Fitness principles to people outside of our comfort zone of knowledge, right? People who are very, very old or very, very young. And they're just the idea that we can have this conversation with somebody and it's like something we're thinking about and we're something that we can, grow with, like that's awesome. I have people every day who, are using the app and giving us feedback and helping me, build this business. And it's been overwhelmingly positive. And so I fully think that, if we continue to keep our principles and our ideas pure and without the toxicity that normally surrounds like getting too hobbyist, getting too deep into a hobby often leads to like toxic, thought patterns, right? Because you start getting like the elitism and you start getting, in all aspects, right? I played Magic the Gathering for a while, and I never enjoyed going to the game shops to play it, because like there's that certain element of elitist. It's like, oh, I've been playing for 15 years, I know better. It's like all different realms. And so with Lucid Fitness, I want to keep it as pure as possible, so that the beginners, the people, the low-hanging fruit, as I like to put it, which means like these are the people who can most benefit from these principles, can, continue to benefit from it. But that's also like, I also have to be real with them that it is a challenge, right? And back to your point is like, that's why we're trying to build this community, is so that more people can latch on to a very strong base. You have Sarah, you have me, you have this community of people who have been, thus far more supportive than I could have imagined, also going through their journeys, right? Because my journey is not stopping because Lucid Fitness exists now. Yeah. But there is a certain element of trailblazing. Let us blaze a trail for you with fitness and nutrition, so that you can get to the things that, really matter to you, right? Let us just follow these principles and, do the work for those until they're ingrained in your life and your identity, so that you can focus your energy on your family or your career or your business or whatever it is that you may be. And so that we can take that next step as well. I want Lucid Fitness to evolve as a thing, as a community, right? And so whatever stage you're in your fitness and nutrition journey, like that is your first step. Like this is like, if you watch this far in the series, like it should be abundantly clear that this is the first step you have to make.
I think all of this can feel really daunting. I mean, it's exciting. It feels really exciting, but sometimes exciting things can feel really daunting. And the fear of perfection or the fear of imperfection, right, can hit pretty hard when you want to make big life changes like what we're talking about. So let's talk about and round out this episode in kind of the last idea of this mindfulness section of embracing imperfection.
To a perfectionist, there's nothing we're going to be able to say that's going to make them think like, oh yeah, like imperfection's fine. Like if you're a perfectionist, you're going to be a perfectionist, right? But if you're a perfectionist who never starts anything because they're scared of doing it in an imperfect way, that's where it becomes detrimental, right? And so if you're going to be a perfectionist, at least apply yourself towards, trying to make whatever it may be perfect, right? But for the vast majority of us, like we have to accept the fact that it's an imperfect path, and there is an element of self-limitation that comes from wanting perfection. It's like, it's a common pitfall. It's like, oh, if I can't do my workout and nutrition perfectly, if I don't have the perfect mindset to go happy, and it's why so many people are fake on the internet, because they want to like portray this idea of like, I'm a perfectly happy go lucky person all of the time. Like I'm the type of person everyone wants to be. And like, they're trying to give this image of perfection that isn't true, right? Because for a lot of people, it is very much like that, where they only want to do things if it can be perfect. And the reality is life doesn't allow that. It really doesn't. And so you kind of have to accept the fact that, I've only ever filmed 7 podcasts. There's going to be some things I don't say perfectly well, right? I've only been working on this company for less than 2 years. There's going to be things that I do that aren't perfect, right? And it's why it's very prominent in the self-development world that you're expected to fail. And we coined it as like the expected unknowns of life, right? Like you expect and you begin to accept the fact that there are going to be unknowns in your life that pop up out of nowhere, right? Like children are going to have random Fridays, snow days, and that can't break your entire world. It can't shatter your world, or you're destined to have a hard time, right? Like you have to adapt. You have to be willing to accept the fact that it's an imperfect journey, right?
Things are always going to happen. And if your willpower and your consistency and your discipline is solely based on, I've made this decision, so I'm going to do it this way, and if that changes, well, then I'll just throw it out the window. Then we need to go back and have a re-understanding and a relearning of willpower, consistency, and discipline.
Exactly. And these attributes they're skills. And so you have to use them consistently, but if you use them consistently, they don't go away. There's a few things that I think of now that we're talking about these mental things again. Like you could very well ask the question, it's like, well, you're talking about willpower, you're talking about consistency, you're talking about discipline, but how do I get those, right? Mm-hmm. And there's an element of just going and doing it. Like that's, action is the first step, right? Like none of it matters if you don't act. But then, how do you, forge the discipline? How do you stay consistent? And if you look back at all of the other video podcasts that we've made, they all have this underlying tone of like consistency. Like that's what we're hunting for here. Like these principles exist to get you to be able to consistently apply them. And then it just takes a little bit of willpower, and it takes forging your path with discipline. And a lot of that, especially for me, comes from mindfulness and comes from meditation. And so I think the old saying is try to meditate 10 minutes a day, and if you don't have time for it, you should be meditating an hour a day, right? It's this idea. It's like this is the first step for mindfulness, is learning like what's going on in there, right? Like it's like, how could you ever be a disciplined person if you don't really if you aren't filtering your thoughts, right? Because even me, I would consider like above average discipline. I still have times where I'm like, man, I just want a nap. right? I just want to lay around, right? And so if you're not a disciplined person, like, and you let these thoughts run wild, then you're gonna fall. You're more likely not eventually just gonna be like, yeah, like I can take a nap, right? I worked out yesterday. I can nap all day today. You need to take control over that, right? You need to think like when those thoughts come up, it's like, do I need a nap? Am I actually tired? Do I warrant this nap? Or is it just me, like my lizard brain wanting to go and take a nap because, I've been working a little bit harder than I usually do. And so the first step of being able to control your mind is to work on controlling your mind, right? And that comes from mindfulness, intentional mindfulness. If you've never done it, then it's hard to explain, but it's the idea of like looking at your thoughts and looking at what you're thinking at any given moment, right? You can do it throughout your day. Meditation is more of a structured thing, and mindfulness is more of a day-to-day, watching your thoughts, learning how you're thinking about certain things and controlling it, learning to control your thoughts. Whereas meditation, it comes in all different forms, is more of a focused and structured way of mindfulness. Like I'm sitting down with the sole purpose of looking, like when I'm, going to a store and trying to be mindful of myself and others, like I'm not trying to put myself in a meditative state to do so. I'm just like trying to, every chance I get, to think about like, oh, how am I being perceived here? How am I conveying myself into the world? Versus meditation, which is more of a structured, like I'm going in to either, clear my thoughts because I'm overwhelmed, or maybe have a, constructive thinking session, or, whatever it may be. There's tons of different forms of meditation. I'm not of the belief there's a right meditation. I think even the act of sitting down and just looking at your thoughts, which if you don't understand what I'm saying, you should try it.
Yeah.
Like if you don't understand what it means to look at your thoughts, then you need to try, right? Just sit down and just like think about thinking.
Yeah.
And just like I think the biggest thing is like not doing it in a judgmental way, just doing it in like an analytical way. Some people do it better with writing. It's like some people believe the only way to think is to write, right? And the reason is because they're just taking these ideas and like they're looking at them. They're looking at them and they're bringing them into the world. And if you don't look at your thoughts, they just run away. They just like go all over the place. And that's why so many people ruminate over negative things, is because if you let it, those things will consume your mind, right? And so in order to prevent that, you have to learn to, step one, you look at your thoughts, right? Step two, you begin to analyze it in a way that maybe more than just looking at it, you start thinking about whether is this a positive or negative thought? Is this something I identify with or don't identify it? And step three is like you start to begin to learn to overcome those thoughts or to adopt those thoughts. Like if more people simply like looked at their thoughts and like, this is a negative thought, I don't like that. Like, this is a positive thought, I like that, and just did that enough times, eventually they become more of a positive person. They start having more positive inner dialogue and stuff like that. But without the active, intentional mindfulness and meditation, you're just kind of like going through life. You're not thinking, right?
I think it's so important. It's important enough that we've even built it into the app. Like, which I think is one of the big things that sets Lucid Fitness apart from other fitness tracking apps or nutrition tracking apps, is this aspect as well. And if you haven't seen the app, you can go ahead and download it and check it out. But there is a whole section on mindfulness and meditation, because we do believe that this is integral to creating the balance that you need.
It's another piece of a whole picture, right? Without the mind part of it, and like no fitness and nutrition don't matter if you can't control your mind enough to practically implement it into your life. And that's where a lot of people come. Like if you're depressed and you're sad and stuff, it's substantially more difficult to start a fitness and nutrition journey. But if you start like really thinking like, man, I want to improve my life, man, I want to, like, you think about that. Like I would say if you could do any one thing to start improving your mental world, force thoughts. Like any positive thought that comes across, latch onto it and just repeat it. And you can do it with negative thoughts too. I kind of do it in like an overriding mechanism. Like if I have a negative thought about a person, say I'm like, oh, this person is not nice. I will override the thought and just like repeat the corrective action. It's like, oh, this person's nice. This person's done this for me. This person's done this for me. This person is like redirecting that energy into, more constructive thought. Like it is very, very effective, but it's a very slow process, much like the rest of the journey, right? Like you're meditating. It's weird because like it's self-feeding, right? The more you meditate, the more likely you are to meditate the next time because it's like forging the consistency required to be consistent, for the lack of a better way of explaining it. And so you kind of just have to like start doing it, right? You start thinking about your thoughts, right? I think if more people spent even 20 minutes less scrolling, like consuming content and being told what to think, if they took 20 of those minutes and just like legitimately thought about their own thoughts and critically thought, like their lives would change pretty rapidly, I believe. I don't know, we could go into a whole other conversation about this, but you got to start somewhere. And the reason this is one of the core principles is because none of the other stuff matters when you don't have the right mindset. And if you don't have the consistency, if you don't have the willpower to start, obviously if you don't start, nothing matters, right? If you don't start your fitness journey, you're never going to be fit. If you don't have the consistency to do it, you're never going to reap results. If you don't forge the discipline necessary to keep going, then, a lot of your effort will become wasted because you didn't build the proper discipline loops to keep going indefinitely, right?